Hello, welcome to another Becoming a Modern Man. We are running humans in Modern once again, and we are playing against Green, White, Death and Taxes. In this matchup, this deck seems to be seeing a bit more play, I think largely off the back of how good Thalia is in the current metagame. And also Knight of Autumn, I suppose, to another extent. So, yeah, this deck is kind of cropped up. I mean, it's not exactly new, but it appears to be seeing a bit more play, just because of the current metagame. So it's quite interesting in general. So probably a deck to be prepared for. So we're going to keep this hand. It's not ideal, but it's got some disruption, and Noble Hierarch is going to help accelerate us. So Freebooter sees all creatures there, and I think we got to see it. So we see creatures and lands. The opponent's got Township, Ghostwater, Arbiter, Thalia, Knight of Autumn, Aven Mindcensor, and another Arbiter. So that's pretty interesting. We're going to attack for 1 here with our Hierarch. We kind of don't want to get obliterated by Ghostwater in this matchup, ideally. So I think we're going to Reflector Mage here. Seems really good because our opponent's got 2 Arbiters, so not letting them play them is quite nice. Knight of Autumn comes down, gets 2 counters. I'm going to Phantasmal Image, copying the Reflector Mage and bounce the Knight of Autumn, and then attack for 4. One plays Flicker Wisp, which kills the Phantasmal Image. I guess play Vial. We'll attack for 4 again with our Reflector Mage, put our opponent down to 5. Knight of Autumn gains our opponent 4 life. They go up to 9, then down to 8 off the Horizon Canopy. Playing a Leonin Arbiter. Attack for 4 again, see if our opponent wants to block, which they don't. Can keep this champion into Violet in. I actually missed the opportunity to Violet in there for whatever reason. We're going to attack here again, but our opponent does have Gavony Township, which is a concern. So yeah, Township, pump all the guys. Kill the Arbiter. We crack the Horizon Canopy in response, just in case we manage to find the Thalia's Lieutenant, which we can Vial in at instant speed. Keeping our Vial on 2 for that purpose, primarily. We're going to fly in with the Freebooter, given it's got nothing on it. That seems fairly good. Plays Mindcensor. Giving this Mantis Rider back because we can potentially surprise our opponent with it. We kind of want them to attack with their Mindcensor. It runs on 4, they attack with Mindcensor, they tap so they can't activate Stirring Wildwood, which has reach, so that would have been a problem as well. So yeah, I quite liked the idea of keeping it back and hoping our opponent didn't produce an answer. So running Freebooter first, just in case our opponent has Path. It turns out they don't. They do have another Aven Mindcensor though. But it's still going to go fairly well for us. So we get to attack for 5, so even the Stirring Wildwood isn't actually a very good blocker for this Mantis Rider at this point. Then tries a card of Horizon Canopy, plays Thalia, plays Arbiter. It's forced to chump block here. Well, actually, we attack with both. See if our opponent's willing to take 3, which makes them go down to 1. We'll play Meddling Mage, naming Path to Exile, because it's probably the worst thing that could happen to us at this point. It's not likely our opponent's going to draw another Knight of Autumn and gain 4 life, and I can't really think of anything else that would be too bad for us in this spot, so Path seems like a good way to protect us. Phantasmal Image is a great card in this position, so we're going to be able to copy Mantis Rider and then just fly in for 6 and win the game. So yeah, so that worked out fairly nicely. We did have some cause for concern in terms of this Gavany Township just pumping up all their guys, but fortunately we were fast enough to head that off and were able to put enough pressure on that they weren't able to just sit back and grow all their creatures to a huge size. Yeah, the flying / evasion on our creatures came in pretty handy for this one, and helps us get across this ground stall. So it worked out pretty nicely. So let's take a look at our options for sideboarding. Okay, so here are the sideboard. Sideboard options are kind of interesting for this matchup. We have quite a few cards that aren't terribly good, but then again we don't have a ton of cards that are terribly great to bring in either, so it's kind of a funny one. Thalia is not at her best for obvious reasons. I mean, it's still a decent attacker with First Strike, but obviously not our actual best because our opponent isn't playing many or any spells. I assume they run Path, but I don't imagine they really run anything else, much like our own deck. So Thalia's not his best. Kitesail Freebooter, obviously not very good as well for the same reasons. So I think those are cards we probably want to look at taking out, or at least some number of them. In terms of cards that are good in the sideboard, Knight of Autumn is probably fairly decent. It can help us in the race. It can destroy vials if assuming that they run them, which I imagine they do, and then it can just be a big threat if we need it to be. So I think Knight of Autumn is probably a worthwhile bringing. Deputy of Detention is probably pretty good as well as a useful way of trying to interact with them. Orruk Champion as well might be decent. They're like Flicker Whispering and so on, so we can gain some sort of incremental advantage off of that. But ultimately, Champion is just a 1/1, so it depends how much that life gain is worthwhile. And then we've got Dismember. So they are like taxing spells, I suppose, with Thalia and so on. But I think Dismember is still pretty good. I think we want to be bringing at least some number of those in because it pays to answer things like Arbiter and so on, so we don't just lose our lands and get locked out of the game. So yeah, I think we need to bring in some number of Dismembers. That's probably the best card in our sideboard for this matchup. Then Deputies and Knight of Autumns, perhaps in some numbers, I think is probably where we're looking to go. Okay, so we have game 2 against Green White Death and Taxes. This opening hand is pretty nice, to be honest. So obviously we must have kept some number of Thalias in. I imagine we cut at least one for this matchup, because we increased the numbers primarily because it's good against a lot of decks in the format. But this is not one of those matchups. I'm going to get a turn 2 Mantis Rider here, which is pretty nice. We're just going to be able to fly in for 4 over this Voice of Resurgence. I'm going to place Flicker Wisp, which doesn't do a whole lot in the current situation. Decided not to block the Voice because the token might be more valuable to our opponent than the actual just 2/2. So I decided to leave that as is. I'm going to play Thalia to see if our opponent's going to Path. I'm going to force them to react, and then we can respond accordingly at least. And then Freebooter comes down, and we get to see our opponent's hand, which is Arbiter, Flicker Wisp, Crusader, which is interesting. So we have got a flying threat at least, but it'll be interesting to see what our opponent plays. Okay, so they're going to Flicker Wisp their Flicker Wisp. This is one of the sort of cool interactions with Flicker Wisp. So you Flicker Wisp your Flicker Wisp, the Flicker Wisp comes back end of turn, and then you can exile something until the next end step. So you can have your opponent be without it for their whole turn, essentially. It's kind of the point of Flickerwisp as you play it with Vial. It's a lot more exciting with Vial. So we are going to be able to Deputy of Detention here and take both Flickerwisps. It's pretty nice, obviously, on the basis that we don't end up losing the Deputy somehow. We do know our opponent has Path now, so that is something to be aware of. We're going to attack for 3 here. Opponent blocks and gets an elemental token. We play another Hierarch. Opponent plays Mirran Crusader. I'm going to play Thalia's Lieutenant. I'm just going to fly over for 4 here. Put one down to 7. It passes, plays Arbiter, which is fine. And we are going to be able to, off the draw, play this Reflector Mage. Must have kept in more Thalias than we probably should have done, as far as I can see anyway. And I think that does it. Thanks to Thalia's Lieutenant, we're actually able to swing in for enough damage for lethal. Are we? Oh no. We calculated that wrong, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then 2 blocks. I think it's okay. Okay, so we attack just with the freebooter. Opponent actually finds the Path to Exile to get rid of our Deputy of Detention, which gets them their Flickerwisps back, which is not good. Reba comes back down, Thalia's Lieutenant continues to grow. We get our other Thalia back. And we just get rid of their other one. I used it basically to pump the Lieutenant. We attack with everyone here on the assumption that we can get through enough points of damage here. Opponent's going to be able to pump with Gavony Township, which means our blocks, they've got some decent blocks here, but they are going to go down to down to 1 after blocks. We're going to lose a lot of stuff, but they're on 1, and they've only got 2 creatures. It goes quite our land, which isn't terribly relevant at this point. Play Pride Mage. We get a champion. So this has been pretty tight, to be honest. Tighter than I was expecting this game to go. Attacks for 5 with Flickerwisp in the air, which puts us down to 10. So we're going to need to find an answer soon. And cracks a Horizon Canopy. We have a Deputy of Detention, which is going to take out an Arbiter, and that is going to allow us to get in for 1 point of damage, which is all we need to wrap this one up. So yeah, this was a pretty tight game. Don't know if we could have played it better in certain places and made it a little bit easier on ourselves. Certainly losing the Deputy to Path was pretty bad, though I'm not sure we could have done a lot about that. And yeah, I suppose we didn't do a ridiculous attack in the end, which was probably the right way of going about it. So yeah, we managed to narrowly edge this one out and finish out the game. This matchup's pretty interesting. I guess our decks are kind of similar in that they're entirely creature focused and very removal light. The taxes that they have on us are sort of not quite as significant. Certainly destroying our lands is going to be painful, but we do have Vial, which mitigates that somewhat. And then after that, we've got some evasive creatures. It's also pretty useful in this matchup. So yeah, it's kind of an interesting one. I think the hate that the Hate Bears is bringing here is probably not as badly targeted at humans, which means that we can play around it that a little bit better. But it's certainly an interesting matchup. I think in the long game they're more likely to pull one out. because of Gavany Township, etc. But as it turned out, we managed to narrowly pull it out of the bag here.